Good evening and welcome everyone to the Cover One Roundup. I am your host, David Fox. With me, as usual, is UberHansen. I also had the video playing on a different window, so I heard myself in stereo. That was great. Totally didn't freak me out. I feel like I was right there. Um, we are very excited to talk to everyone tonight. We're very excited to talk about specific parts of Saturday's game, not all the parts of Saturday's game, because that was real rough for a while there. But it was good. There were definitely good things to talk about. There are some not so great things to talk about. We have news to talk about, which is sort of like the original intent of this show, but like anything else I do, it veers very far from that. But first things first, Uber, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Like you're saying, don't really want to talk about all of the game, but there's definitely some parts of the game that should be fun to talk about. I mean, it's Monday, it's still preseason, so I don't really care about the outcome of the game, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean it's still preseason, but it's a lot easier to tell yourself it's just preseason when everything goes well, and when you have 12 penalties in a single half of football, a number of which were procedural penalties in a half-empty stadium. You kind of feel like, all right, I don't feel like justifying all of this to myself today. But that's the nature of football. It is what it is. So before we get too far into things, we're going to do what we normally do, and that is pay for this show. And that is thanks to our wonderful friends at Underdog Fantasy. Folks, if you are getting ready for fantasy football season, look no further than Underdog Fantasy. It is the best website for fantasy football. If you have your one home league each year and that one draft isn't enough for you, Underdog Fantasy is for you. You get all the fun of drafting your own players, but without the waivers and the lineup decisions. Best ball drafts allow you to have all the fun of drafting your team, all the chances to win big, none of the week-to-week hassle. And if you use the promo code COVER1 when signing up to make your first deposit, Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That is a free $100 for you to use with Underdog Fantasy, to be clear. We're very happy to be partnering again with Underdog Fantasy here at Cover One. You get best ball drafts that we talk about, pick'em challenges. All this can be found at Underdog. It's sort of like a one-stop shop for fantasy football. Again, if you use promo code Cover1, you get your first deposit double up to $100. Got to be 18 years or older, obviously. Sign up today and start winning today. So first thing is we're going to get into some news. There was some interesting news just around the league. There's some Bills related news. And then there's Stephen A. Smith. And we'll talk about Stephen A. Smith to start because so to recap those who are not quite as terminally online as some of us are, Stephen A. Smith on his show, the First Take, is he on First Take? I keep forgetting where everyone is nowadays. I think he's
I don't remember which one he's on now. Yeah, he's bounced all over the place too.
Yeah. So let's say it was First Take. And he says that Josh Allen is not Josh Allen. He says that Stephon Diggs is unhappy. He's requested a trade. He said that sources close to Stephon Diggs have said that he wants out of Buffalo, which is a very interesting thing to bring up on August 21st in the year of our Lord 2023, because for the previous 4 months, there's been talk of Stephon Diggs being unhappy and wanting out and blah, 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 blah. And now he's going to chime in with sources close to Stephon Diggs that he wants out and doesn't want to be here, and that come on. It's just what are we doing here? Like this is on ESPN. This is live TV on ESPN. He's saying this, and it's just one of the most ridiculous things I could have possibly seen today. Your thoughts, if you have any, beyond that?
I mean, it took me a long time in my life to learn that a lot of these people are just, clickbait trolls, essentially. Extremely talented at what they do. Stephen A. Smith is brilliant at what he does. He's made a massive career off of it. He's one of the biggest sports personalities there are. But at the end of the day, you got to remember he's trying to sell clicks. He's trying to sell views. And this is literally what he did. The way he dropped it, if you haven't seen the video, the way he just kind of suddenly switches and start talking about Diggs, like that to me alone, I was like, all right, something's real weird here. And like you said, this was a story a month ago. Like, why are we talking about it again now? And of course, now we're all talking about Stephen A. Smith.
Of course,
even Stephon Diggs had to talk about Stephen A. Smith today as well.
That's right. It was just like, wait, I really just looked at it and I was like, is this old? Is this like an old bit that did like somebody recycle a tweet from like a while back and like people just sort of didn't realize it was from then? I was like, no, this is from today. That's somehow even worse. Like it was just, it's really stupid.
I don't know. Did you see the video, the more recent video where he kind of walked it back a little bit?
Yes, I did.
But he didn't say he's not at fault in any way. No. Stephon Diggs' people are at fault. He's got to check his people, make sure his people are. It was like, come on, man,
Stephen A. Smith made his career as a basketball reporter. I don't know what sources he has in the Buffalo Bills organization that apparently no one else has, because nobody else has been on this story saying this specifically, that he wants a trade out. Everyone has just sort of been like, he seems a little unhappy and he's a little, not quite satisfied with the situation, but it's all very vague and we're not 100% sure, et cetera, because nothing really seems to come out of one Bills drive as long as Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are there. And probably more specifically Derek Boyko. And now that I've said his name, this whole video is probably going to get taken down in about 30 seconds. But it's just like, are you this desperate, this hungry for attention at this point? Like, I understand it's not like the best part of the NFL cycle, right? But like, there's stuff to talk about. You don't have to just make stuff up. And then to address what RJ says, at this point, can't ESPN get in trouble for just making stuff up, degradation of character or something? No more than the National Enquirer does, which is to say, not really at all. There's a very big difference between slander and libel. You can libel someone all the live long day. Slander is a whole other messy legal situation. I apologize, but I'm going to address this other comment. Trey Mitchell, shout out Trey, my boy Trey, first person to allow me to write about sports on his website a long time ago. Awesome. Hey David, do you agree with Amarillo, Texas news reporter Preston Seymour that Dak Prescott is as good as Josh Allen? No, go to hell, Preston. That's all I got to say.
Enough said on that. Yeah,
thank you, Trey. Thank you, Trey, for allowing me my platform to do that. We're gonna move on. Some recent news that's just come out in the last hour. Jonathan Taylor has now been given permission to seek a trade from the Indianapolis Colts, which seems like where is this gonna go? I mean, I can't look. The Colts would love to have Jonathan Taylor back. I think they've made that very clear and obvious from the start, for the fact that, like, Jim Irsay is inviting him onto his bus in the middle of training camp to like hash things out. And the fact they tried very hard to work something out, but it's obvious that Jonathan Taylor wants to be paid and the Colts aren't willing to pay him what he wants. And I'm not sure any NFL team is going to pay him what he wants, because that's just the market today. You don't pay most running backs a significant amount of money, and especially a running back that, while is obviously very good and very talented, also had a pretty bad injury list last year. And for the running back position, I mean, that's always the big concern, right? Is that you have such a small shelf life in the NFL that if you start with having injury issues now when you're still in your rookie contract, it takes a lot for an NFL team to commit to that the way that you want to be committed to. It's a hard thing to really sit there and be like, yes, we will give you a market reset contract, even though you just came off of a terrible season where you didn't do much because you were injured. Oh, and also in the middle of the season, we traded for a running back, right? Like they traded for Zach Moss in the middle of the season. Of course, they also got rid of Nyheim Hines in the middle of that as well. But obviously, two very, very different players. Like Hines is a utility, like, scat back type of player, whereas Zach Moss is the opposite of that, right? But it's interesting because I don't know what they're expecting to have happen here. I don't know what Jonathan Taylor is expecting to get out of this. I don't know what team is going to give up good enough assets that the Colts are going to be like, yes, we will accept that. That seems like a reasonable offer for this player because he's obviously a talented player, but you're not going to get a great trade offer because the team that's trading for him has to pay him. That's the whole point. That's why he's being traded. Like, nothing about this seems like it's going to end well for any of these sides involved.
Yeah, I think this is Jim Irsay essentially calling Jonathan Taylor's bluff, saying, okay, you want to get paid? You go find a trade partner. If you can get somebody to trade us a first-round pick or the equivalent of that, we'll go for it. But like you were saying, you're asking that team that's trading for him to, one, trade for a running back, one of the most devalued positions in the NFL, two, give him a market-setting contract. We're talking $15, $16, $17 million a year, which is just not going to happen. And then three, give up the asset, give up that first-round pick or a second and a third. And I look through every team and I'm like, I don't know what team's going to do this or wants to or should. People were saying the Dolphins, they're in cap purgatory next year, probably worse than the Bills because they haven't paid their quarter. Like, I don't know how you do this. How are you going to pay Waddle, Jonathan Taylor, and Tua Tagovailoa, or just cut two? Say Tua, you're not paying Tua. You still got to pay those two guys. How are you going to do this? It's just not possible.
And so, especially for that offense, which has made a larger case for the whole like stupid idea of running backs don't matter than any other thing in the NFL because they just bring whatever draft pick they made that year and like, hey, we'll put you in there, you get 1,200 yards. That's what that whole Shanahan offense is about.
This whole, I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen is Jonathan Taylor is going to play for the Colts this year. That I just don't see this trade. I don't know how this trade happens. I can't. It'll be real interesting when it does happen, like during this show, and somebody trades their entire draft for him.
I hope it does.
I'm sick of these running backs whining. To be completely honest, like it's just driving me nuts at this point.
Anti-labor Uber. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That's always the stupid argument. That's always great when you start devolving it into labor. Anyway, we're not gonna get into that. But I just like who wants to do that? Who wants to make this trade? Who wants to actually do this? And honestly, this is starting to give me like Le'Veon Bell vibes, right? Like when he held out with Pittsburgh, again, trying to do essentially the same thing, where he wanted to reset the market, and Pittsburgh was like, no, we're not doing that. Of course, Pittsburgh's idea of what a fair long-term contract was like a 2-year deal that was giving him less money over 2 years than what he was going to make on the franchise tag in 1 year. Yeah. So I don't know how serious they actually were about keeping him around, but that's neither here nor there. Jonathan Taylor is clearly trying to do something that I don't think he will end up being able to accomplish because, a team like Arizona has the capital to spare, but like, why would they do that? They have so many needs, and that team is awful. That like, what are you going to do by putting a running back behind an offensive line that like doesn't exist? They don't have an offensive line.
You're just going to cost yourself Caleb Williams. No. That's all you're going to do.
Like that's the thing. Like it doesn't make any sense for a team like that to trade for him. And if it doesn't make sense for a team like Arizona to trade for him, then who is? Like it does nothing about this makes any sort of sense. It's just it's a shame. It's a shame because we all want. Well, I shouldn't say we all want. I'm sure Jags and Titans fans and Texans fans are probably looking at this like, oh, thank God, our team's not the one under fire this time. But I think most fans of football are looking at this and saying, yeah, we all want to see Jonathan Taylor play. He's a great player. But this is the nature of business and football coming together. And it's unfortunate. Moving on. Some Bills news. Let's get to two unfortunate bits of news. Shane Ray and Tommy Doyle, both to IR. Let's talk about Tommy Doyle first, because this one is rough because he had torn. Did he tear his Achilles or was it his ACL last year? I can't remember.
I think it was his ACL because he finished the game against the Dolphins with the torn ACL.
That's right. Yeah. So he tears his ACL last year, and I don't think they mentioned any specifics. I don't think it was announced that any specifics for the injury for Tommy Doyle, but they basically just said he's out for the year. And that's really tough. I mean, regardless of Tommy Doyle and what you might think of his play on the field, which, like, I don't know how much of that we really have seen, to be perfectly honest. To come back from an injury, an ACL injury, as an offensive lineman is tough. To then have another devastating season-ending injury before you even get a real chance to come back from the first one, that's tough. I mean, I don't know if the Bills, putting him on IR kind of implies that they would like to at least keep him around, and especially with him being on a rookie contract, a 4th-round rookie contract, it's not like he's costing you anything or whatever. It makes sense, but it's tough. It's tough to see this happen, and but what is interesting is, this would probably be slightly more concerning if the other Bills offensive linemen weren't playing at a halfway decent level in the preseason, which, like, we'll talk about the starting offensive line a bit more. The backups for what they are all seem to be, like, showing at least, like, signs of potential, and, like, they're kind of interesting to think about as, like, where do they all fit in terms of the roster projection and cut downs and whatnot. Guys like Ryan Van DeMark and who is the Richard Garage, or however you say his name. There's guys that have been playing well this season, this preseason rather, at offensive tackle. It's pretty good. And that's a good sign. But that all is sort of, like, separated from the fact that this it's pretty sad. I mean, it really is to see Tommy Doyle just fighting to come back and then hit another wall. It's tough to deal with that.
Yeah, and the fun part about preseason is watching these guys fight for roster spots or come back from injuries and impress afterwards. The sad part that we see very often in preseason is injuries, and then obviously cut down days looming here very soon. We're going to see the Bills cut essentially 37 people are going to lose their jobs in a single day or close to a single day, and to see Tommy Doyle kind of his season end the way it did here against the Steelers, the video is not fun to watch. Like, when I saw it, when they showed the replay and you saw his leg bend like that, it's just awful luck for him. I'll just throw out the one stat I love throwing out about Tommy Doyle. He's the 2nd heaviest player ever to catch a postseason touchdown pass ever in NFL history by 1 pound. So that's a pretty awesome thing that he has. But
wait,
hopefully
who's the first? Is it Dan Plecko?
He was a Colts player. I don't remember who it was. In my head, I almost just said Questenberry, but it wasn't. It was recently a Colts player.
I think it's Dan Plecko.
It might be
because he caught that touchdown in that the AFC Championship against the Colts, or against the Patriots when he was with the Colts. Let's see.
Yeah, I tweeted it out at some point that Tommy Doyle weighs 320 pounds. This dude weighed 321. So,
but defensive tackle, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's it's just tough, man. It's tough to see that. It's really unfortunate. And on the same topic of, guys that are trying to make a comeback, Shane Ray, right? I mean, this was a 1st-round pick of the Broncos back in 2015, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
Time's going real fast.
Isn't it? It's really, really unfortunate that I had to think about that. I think I was a freshman in college when that happened, and I'm really aging myself right there, and that's really depressing right now. We're not going to talk about that anymore. But Shane Ray was a former 1st-round pick. Didn't really work out with the Broncos, had some issues, and really, I mean, he was out of. It seemed like he was out of football for a while there, right? Like. Yeah. Let me double check with my producers. Yes, he was in the NFL. He was with the Broncos on the Ravens practice squad, and then went into the CFL. He didn't do anything in 2020. Went to the CFL with the Toronto Argonauts, and then came back with the Bills, and now is back on IR, and it's unfortunate. I was never really a big Shane Ray person. When he came out of college, I thought he was fine, but not like an amazing player. None of that really matters because he was, clearly trying to do something that is a difficult thing to do, to leave the NFL for a whole year, come back into the CFL, and then get the attention of another NFL team so much that they bring you in onto a very, very stacked defensive line room, right? Like that's a tough thing. And he was competing, and it seemed like, he was doing everything he could to try and make this roster, and he would have been great as part of this rotation. But, unfortunately, this is part of what happens in the game, and it's tough to see that happen with Shane Ray. Jessica brings up interesting point. Love Bills putting Shane Ray on IR, keeping him in the house. You hope that he will have another chance at this, either with the Bills or even with another team. But it's tough to see a story like that seemed to really kind of capture quite a few people in terms of just perseverance. I mean, that's such a big part of football, and especially when you're not necessarily a superstar or something like that. Like you gotta be able to push through a lot of rejection and a lot of difficult conversations, and constantly moving around to different areas, different cities, and at the very least with him now being on IR, he can at least be with this team and be around this team, and be at the, there's also the fact that like this Bills medical staff and their facilities are one of the better ones in the NFL, and maybe that helps with his recovery. I don't know, but it is tough to see someone like that who was really fighting hard for a roster spot just end up on IR before he gets a chance to prove himself fully.
Yeah, and he could have, if he doesn't make the 53, which was always going to be a tall task for him, the practice squad's still available. He had a real shot at making the practice squad at a minimum, and that lets you rekindle your career, right? Like he could get called up for a game at any point during the season. So it's a huge bummer for Shane Ray to kind of go out the way he did. But I'm interested to hear what his injury was, because they at first said a pulled hamstring, which then IR comes into like IR is interesting at that point. Are they kind of IR stashing him and then later in the season try to flip him back out? It's just interesting.
It's possible. It's possible. Yeah. And that was a thought that came to mind as well, but we'll see. The Bills are obviously very, very cagey when it comes to disclosing any sort of injury to any of the players. But so last bit of news, 2 signings, Garrett McGinn, an offensive tackle, signs with the Bills, and Ty Johnson, former Jets running back, also signs with the Bills. McGinn comes in as a sort of Tommy Doyle camp body replacement, I guess, if you want to view it that way. And Ty Johnson, I don't really get bringing him into this late, especially since you already have a lot of running backs on this roster. I don't know what bringing in another guy is supposed to accomplish, but whatever, I guess. That's my professional take. Whatever.
The only thing I have with the two is Ty Johnson. Hey, come play the last preseason game, and while you're here, bring that Jets playbook and let's have a look at it real quick. That's the only reason Ty Johnson makes sense to me. I mean, but good for him too. Show out in this final preseason game. Maybe somebody picks you up.
Yeah, and that's always the thing, right? That's sort of something that I always like. I shouldn't say always like, because it's a very recent change. That they changed the cut down day to just one cut down day, and instead of now this guy is going to go get cut in the middle of the preseason, and it's are they really? Is someone else going to pick them up? Probably not. So they just end up on the street doing nothing until someone maybe decides that they're gonna try and get them. But when you're just on the team, at least you would have like a full competitive season in the preseason to really go out there and show everything you got. And it is what it is. And I think that someone like Ty Johnson, I don't think they're really making the roster, but you never know. You never know what's going to get shown. And maybe he does enough and they try to bring him back on the practice squad or whatever, but both kind of whatever signings. And I'm not really sure what how important this really is to the grand scheme of things, but that's neither here nor there at this point. Oh, wonderful. From
Mr.
Kyle Salagi, former co-host of the podcast. I don't even know what this is about. I really don't. I feel like now I have to check the group chat. Wait, Bills signed Kyle approved player Deshaun White. I don't even.
Okay. Linebacker Deshaun White. Okay.
Hold on. Buffalo. Okay, here we go. So Buffalo Bills signed former Oklahoma linebacker Deshaun White recently in the USFL with the Michigan Panthers. Cool. Thanks, Kyle. Boomer. Oh, okay. Is he calling me a boomer or is he a University of Oklahoma boomer? I'm gonna go with the second. I assume he's not randomly calling me a boomer for no reason. Sure. Let's talk about Deshaun White. He is approved by former co-host of the Cover One Roundup, Kyle Salagi. Anything else?
That's about my extent of my knowledge on him. Yes.
Cool. Let's move on. I'm happy that you're happy, Kyle. So let's move on. Let's talk briefly about this Steelers game. That was a rough first half. That was really just annoying and dumb and stupid to watch, mostly because of the penalties. And the block in the back wasn't really a block in the back. Right. I mean, he's very clearly on the side and in front of the defender, whatever. But then, of course, the very next play, he gets called for a hold, which, that's part of the story of Spencer Brown at this point. And, there were pre-snap penalties and it was just really just not a fun first half of football to watch. It was between the 67-yard touchdown run, which, by the way, the running back who did that, I don't know what his name is, but I know it's not Najee Harris, and I feel like I have not heard anything about Najee Harris in a very long time. So, and look, I'm not a great fantasy football person. I think that I'm in like 5 or 6 leagues this year for absolutely no reason other than I just apparently can't say no to people at this point in my life. But I do not win many fantasy football leagues. I kind of lucked into one last year, but if I'm going to give a piece of fantasy football advice this year, don't draft Najee Harris. I don't know what's going on there. You've been in on the Pittsburgh hype train. I feel like you're kind of the lone conductor of the train at this point. In your assessment, resident Pittsburgh Steelers expert, what's going on there? Like what's kind of happening with that?
Yeah, I mean, so it was Jaylen Warren was the running back,
right?
That had that long run. I think it's just it'd be a split backfield. You'll see Jaylen Warren, you'll see Najee Harris, like they each have their values there. But you make a really good point that I actually haven't even thought about, even as the resident Steeler, hype man. Really haven't heard Najee Harris's name once, and especially in the summer of running backs, to not hear his name one time. A little odd out of Pittsburgh with that. So I definitely have to look into that one for sure.
It seems like, I mean, and when that touchdown run happened, there were a couple of people on my timeline that were like, Jaylen Warren is the Steelers' best running back. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And then I was like, wait a second, Najee Harris is on that team. What's happening over there? There's something going on that's not going well for Najee Harris, which is, I mean, he was a bit of a controversial pick in the first round, right? Because it was just, first round running back's always going to be a controversial pick these days. True. But he was pretty good as a rookie, especially for the fact that Steelers offense with Big Ben in like skeletal form, trying his best. It was not the best situation for a running back to be in, but he didn't really do much last year either. And obviously the Steelers offense last year wasn't that good either. That was another fun fact of the game that was really interesting. I forget who tweeted it, but somebody said the Steelers in this preseason game scored more touchdowns outside of the red zone than they did all of last year, which is just astounding. I mean, almost impossible. It seems like that.
Last year they had. I'm not going to look it up right now. If you go look at their touchdown log from last year, the distances of their touchdown log is just stupid. Like it's like 2 yards, 3 yards, 5 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards. Where if you go look at Josh Allen's, it's like 98 yards, 47 yards, 32 yards. Like Allen alone had, I think, like 25 more 20-plus yard touchdowns than the Steelers.
Gosh, that's insane. That's just crazy, man.
And they're going to win the North this year, so.
Listen, that second touchdown, the one that Kenny Pickett threw, what a throw! I mean, I didn't think Kenny Pickett had that kind of throw in him. I mean, that was like, because like Eric put this out on Twitter that like that's the coverage that should look like. Like Milano carries Freiermuth up the seam like he's supposed to in the too high look. Pickett's just like, yeah, I'm gonna throw it. It's just gonna be back shoulder and it's gonna work. Obviously,
perfect ball. And
it was from like 25 yards out. It was like, okay, I wasn't sure you were capable of that. I really didn't think you could do that, Kenny. But hey, good for him. It'll be interesting. His progression is going to be a very interesting thing, especially with like Matt Canada as his OC. And I still don't really believe in Matt Canada as an NFL offensive coordinator. But they have good weapons. They have a better offensive line than what they had last year. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously you're very high on them, but again, this is not a Steelers podcast. So let's get into what we really want to talk about, which is the rookies, because the rookies all played pretty well in this game, which was a nice thing to see after all the starters played so crappy. I mean, it was like almost top to bottom. The starters were all just like really disappointing. Of course, two of the starters are rookies or were rookies, Dalton Kincaid and Osiris Torrence. Let's just go first round to the last. Let's just go in order in a way that makes sense. So Kincaid, I mean, this was great. I mean, that was like what we all wanted to see, was sharp, smooth route running, good hands, knowing what to do, in sync with Josh Allen. Like that was what we all wanted to see. I mean, it was like what, 2nd and 16 that he ended up converting on a slant where he just got so open. I mean, just wide open. And that's the sort of thing you want to see. And there's also the fact that we saw him taking on some blocks. He got a run blown up by Minkah Fitzpatrick. That was one of the Latavius Murray runs. It looked like it would have been able to go for more, but Kincaid just kind of got overpowered by one of the better safeties in the NFL. But it's that to me is the book right now on Dalton Kincaid. Like you're going to get an NFL ready-made receiver that is going to legitimately be a good to not, if not great option for your offense. And for a team that was missing so much over the middle from what they have had in previous years, this is exactly what you wanted to see from Kincaid. But there's also the reality that he's not the biggest tight end. He's not the most experienced blocker at tight end. So you're going to have to find ways to not necessarily eliminate him from the run game. Otherwise, you're putting that as a sort of tell. But you're going to have to find a way to have him not be a problem in the run game. So we'll sort of see how that all goes. And obviously, he was starting because of a last-second injury to Dawson Knox that I think, again, was also not disclosed to people. So we'll see how significant that actually is and if that'll require some time out. Or maybe they just sit him for the preseason and let it ride out from there. But if they didn't announce like it being a long-term thing, I would imagine it's not that big a deal, but we'll see what happens with Knox. Regardless, Kincaid, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, kind of using the Knox part to this discussion, like I think it's a big deal that we saw Kincaid as the tight end one, essentially, because it allowed the Steelers to say, we can put our best, most athletic people on you instead of if Knox is there. When the Bills are in 2 tight end sets this year, teams are going to have to make a decision on how they want to cover Knox and how they want to cover Kincaid. This week, they could literally if they want to put Mink on Kincaid, they could do it. If they want to put Cole Holcomb on him, they can do it. And Dalton Kincaid just looked like a seasoned pro. He just looked like that piece that we were missing. He looked like Cole Beasley did in that short intermediate range where it's like, just get open. You just have to be open for Josh. If Diggs and Davis aren't open, you have to be wide open so he can just feed you the ball. And that's what he is. And that looks like what he's going to be. So I'm actually going to push a question back to you because I find it interesting, his progression and the fans' perception of him this entire offseason. Have your expectations gone up for Kincaid, or are you still about the same you were going into the season?
It's really hard for me not to say that my expectations have gone up because I think they have at this point. Because like I try to be as like even-tempered and rational as I can be, largely because fandom is about being the opposite. And I guess I enjoy being a contrarian sometimes. But yeah, it's hard not to be excited when not only am I seeing a legitimately good player playing well and sort of doing what he's been advertised to do, but then I'm looking through Twitter and all these other people are like, I mean, I don't want to say who he reminds me of because it sounds ridiculous and I don't want to get ratioed, but like, yeah, we're all sort of thinking the same thing, that he sort of looks like Travis Kelce. And that was sort of what everyone said leading into the draft. I mean, that was Danny Kelly's like mock draft. Whenever he would talk about Kincaid, it was just like, I don't want to say he's Travis Kelce, but that's not that far off from what he is. It's just like, we all know how great Travis Kelce has been for the last like 10 years or whatever. Yeah. And for long time experienced NFL people would be like, yeah, Kincaid's like kind of there, like, or at least like shows he could be there. Like that's amazing. Like this is exactly to get him at 25th overall in the NFL draft. Yeah, I think most teams would be okay with that.
Yeah, and to go to what you were saying, like you're seeing it all over Twitter, and it's not just Bills fans. That's the thing that's getting me. It's there's accounts I respect, of people's opinions I respect that have no, fandom towards the Bills. Like the Bills are not their team, and they're saying, "Wait, this guy looks legit." The Bills, how did you guys let this happen? How did you let the Bills get him? It's still preseason though. Let me see him get like 12 catches against the Jets, and I'll lose my mind.
If he goes off against the Jets, I'll be so freaking happy. Oh my gosh! And like honestly, like the Jets are going to be an interesting matchup for him because the Jets don't necessarily have like great coverage linebackers. Like they have Quincy Williams, who's just like a big, heavy thumping, downhill hitting type of linebacker, and CJ Mosley is a longtime veteran, and he's really smart. And even though he's not like the most athletic, he's like knows exactly where he needs to be in coverage, no matter what. So him versus Kincaid could be a very interesting matchup in that regard. Now I'm thinking about that. That's going to be interesting. We have to keep my eye on that one.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Maybe it won't be that hard to keep an eye on him if he's getting 12 catches. If Kincaid starts his NFL career with 12 catches against the Jets, that is that's a pretty hard hype train to stop from there. Yeah, that would be awesome. I don't know how realistic that is, but that would be awesome. Moving on, another starter, round 2 pick O'Cyrus Torrence. I was surprised that he got the start, first of all, because he got the start last week. And I think you and I talked about, like, they'll probably start Ryan Bates this week. And, then they started Cyrus Torrence. And that's a tough Steelers defense that he had to go against. And he did pretty well. He did pretty well. And it wasn't just run blocking. It was pass blocking. He seemed to communicate pretty well. He seemed to just hold his ground really well. He recovered pretty well. It was all just like really good, solid, strong performance from a rookie. Like this is somebody who was playing at the University of Louisiana Lafayette for a couple of years, and then he went to Florida with Billy Napier as the head coach, and he just looks really solid. Like just like he looks like he belongs. Right? He doesn't look like he's out of place. He doesn't look like his head is swimming. He doesn't look like he's, getting lost in the sauce or anything like that. He is where he needs to be. He looks like he is all there, that he's doing what he needs to do, and is clearly earning the trust of this coaching staff. Because it's not just like Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, and all them. Like, you have to get the trust of Aaron Kromer. And Aaron Kromer is a well-known and very, very good offensive line coach. And to be perfectly honest, Osiris Torrence is not like his type of player. Like Aaron Kromer has made a living off of taking a bunch of offensive tackles and transforming them into kind of whoever he decides they need to be, right? Like someone like David Edwards, right? Who came out of Wisconsin as an offensive tackle, gets bumped down into guard in the NFL. There you go. He turns into a solid player in the NFL as a guard. And you go through like the rest of his time with like New Orleans and the Rams and even the Bills when he was here. Like that was his MO. He took a lot of former tackles and he just turned them into whatever he wanted to. And with Torrence, I mean, this is somebody who played guard in college, was somebody that necessarily didn't really fit that physical build and profile that he would normally take. So for Torrence to really earn that respect and earn this position is really, really impressive in my opinion.
Yeah, and he also, like, another big part is getting the approval of Josh Allen, the trust of Josh Allen. And this preseason's helping build that, on top of all the other people you said that he has to impress just to get on the field. Like, now that he's on the field, now Josh has to trust him. And the one thing that I kept seeing when I was watching him play against the Steelers was the second somebody's into his body, it's over. Like, he won.
Yeah.
He's just so big and strong. And when he sits that anchor down, you're not going to push him backwards. And thinking about what that provides the Bills, especially with Josh always rolling to the right, almost always going right, Josh now knows that he's got a spot on that offensive line that if Torrence gets his man, he's either got to go outside him or inside him. Josh just has to see the lane, and he now that's going to provide him more flexibility. So, I mean, Torrence was incredibly, impressive to me. I think at this point, McDermott can keep saying it's an open competition. It's an open. No, it's over. He won. He's the right guard, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. There's another company that isn't necessarily happy with that. That's Pro Football Focus, who seems to insist he was really bad on against the Steelers. I disagree.
Let's take a moment. Let's talk about Pro Football Focus for a second. I say this as someone who has tried to work with Pro Football Focus in the past, and both times they said no. So understand that this is coming from a very bitter point of view. But their grading system starts at 60. And based on each play, you either get a 0, a plus 0.5, plus 1, plus 1.5, plus 2, and then minus for bad plays, whatever. Because our wonderful friend, Greg Thompson, called them out a little bit, and Steve Palazzolo of the company responded and said, he had 19 reps. He had 3 plays that we counted as negative. And, obviously those are the ones you're trying to avoid. So that's what sort of chooses that grade. Uber, you're probably more of a math person than I am. So I want you to quickly do some, let's crunch some numbers right now. So start at 60, right?
Yeah.
let's say 3 plays, negative plays. Each one was a -2. They were egregious bad beats.
Yep.
So
Okay.
that's
So if I do
three
minus
times -2 is
it's -6, and if I subtract that from 60, it's 40, right?
right. According to PFF, that's the math. And I can't figure out how, like, nothing about that process makes any sort of sense. I can't. The only thing, truly, this is my own explanation for PFF's grading system. It only exists to create attention. Like, this is the only, because like other places don't do this, right? Like Sports Info Solutions, SIS does not do this. They don't put out grades on players. They put out like, hey, this player excelled really well in this particular category. This is very interesting, and maybe not something you always hear all the time. PFF's like, yeah, these were the best linemen of the NFL this week, and it's like, no, they weren't. Like, you don't understand the blocking assignment. You don't understand the person that you're paying. Oh, hold on, sorry. The people that you're not paying to watch this game and evaluate these players, like, they don't know that, because I know you don't know that, and you probably know more than they do. So let's stop the nonsense. Let's be very honest with ourselves. Bottom line, there are some really great things about Pro Football Focus. There's some great data that they have. We use it on here. We use it in Cover One. We enjoy Pro Football Focus, but good God, don't take their grades ever seriously, ever, at any point. It doesn't make any sense. Nothing about their grades makes sense. And they constantly admit to it not making any sense when they're trying to justify how it makes sense, and it doesn't.
Yeah. I think this is just another opportunity, at least for me. And this, even before I joined Cover One, I started realizing this and following this. Like, just follow Eric Turner. Like, he's going to show you these are the bad, these are the good. Right. He's not going to sugarcoat it for you. Yeah. Eric from Cover One, obviously, like, Pro Football Focus is going to give you a number score and say, that's what he is. He's a 40. How the hell is he a 40? How the hell does that make any sense? And then they backtracked on this later or earlier this morning. And they're like, we were wrong. He wasn't a 40. He was a 48.2. It still doesn't make sense.
Sure. Yeah. Like, yeah. And this happens all the time with them too, right? So you have, they get called out on something, and then they adjust the grades because they allow themselves the ability to adjust grades at any given point in time. And it's just like, so what exactly is this process? Like, it still doesn't make any sense to me. This is not a process. It's just like making it up. It's just jazz. It's football jazz. That's what I'm gonna call it from now on. That's what I'm gonna write that down. I gotta remember to do this now.
I mean, and Torrence looked good. He looked legitimately good.
He did. He really did.
So I think that's something, Bills fans saw all this awful in that Steelers game, just bad, a lot of really bad things, but the Dalton Kincaid looked great, and now Osiris Torrence looked great. That's the first 2 draft picks this year, and both of them might be starters for the Bills. Sean McDermott playing rookies. Is this a thing? That's exciting. I think we'll see more week 1 against the Jets.
Yeah, and Sean McDermott can sit there as he did today and be like, well, it's still a competition between him and Ryan Bates. And it's like, is it though? Because if it were, I feel like Ryan Bates would have done a little bit more than play backup center on Saturday. Mm-hmm. That's just my thought. That's just my thought. Jordan Poyer's driver, wow, at D Foxy really gets bitter. Yeah, a little bit. Whatever. That is what it is. I got paid to work for a different company, and they felt like not paying me was not worth it. It is what it is. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Dorian Williams, 3rd round linebacker pick, super non-controversial pick. Everyone loved that pick, and it made perfect sense to everyone. He had another solid game. I felt like he was pretty solid against the Colts. I felt like he was pretty solid against the Steelers as well. He actually, in back-to-back weeks, made a really great play at the goal line, which was, just him firing out like a cannon and just making a tackle for loss, which is really, really good to see. First of all, how do we feel about 42 as a number? Like, I know Like I know Tremaine Edmonds was 49, and that's sort of a weird number for a linebacker. Of course, I say that, and like Christian Gonzalez is wearing 19 as a corner for the Patriots, which just feels disgusting. And Teddy Bridgewater is wearing 50 for the it's just we need to end the numbers anarchy. There's a point, there's a level to this.
Isn't Roquan wearing 0 now as a linebacker?
That's different. 0 is cool. 0
as a
is
linebacker?
Zero is objectively cool no matter who wears it. A quarterback could wear 0, and I think it would be cool.
I mean, a quarterback
50,
wearing it.
50 is insane. 50 is an obscene gesture.
Yeah,
like I don't know what you're supposed to do with that.
The 50 I don't accept. That is disgusting. Teddy Bridgewater in a 50 jersey is unacceptable. I don't like the 0. You apparently are fine with that. What if a kicker wore 0 or a punter?
Yeah,
it's pretty swaggy. It's pretty swaggy.
If Justin Tucker wore 0,
yeah,
there would be so many 0 Justin Tucker jerseys that sold. It would be one of the most well-sold jerseys in the NFL history.
You're spot on.
Anyway, Dorian Williams versus 42, in case you ever want to see him play. Roy Collins with a great point. Maybe not a great point, but one that's interesting. 00, yes. No, 0, no. I agree 00 should be also brought back, but 0 is also pretty cool. Anyway, so Dorian Williams felt like he played decently well, but they also seem very unwilling to make him a part of this Mike linebacker competition, which I don't know. It just doesn't make much sense at this point because we know what Tyrel Dodson is and isn't. And I think at this point, the coaching staff is starting to realize what Tyrel Dodson is and isn't. Mm-hmm. And you have AJ Klein, who, again, you know what you're getting with him. He's whatever. He's gonna make some tackles and not be terrible, I guess. But he's not going to give you anything close to what Tremaine Edmonds is going to give you, obviously. And that's really the point, right? Is like they knew that it was a strong possibility that they would not be able to bring back Tremaine Edmonds because he was a good linebacker for this team. And NFL teams really respected Tremaine Edmonds. And they knew that him hitting the open market would get him a lot of money. And they knew that whatever he was going to get, they just were not going to be able to afford. So instead of maybe having some sort of plan in place to replace him with someone that you feel more comfortable with, they just said, no, we're gonna try Terrell Bernard there, even though he's not even remotely close to what Tremaine Edmonds is as a player. We're going to bring back Dotson and AJ Klein, and we'll also draft Dorian Williams to be a backup to Matt Milano. It's nothing about this whole process makes any sense. I'm sure most of you, I assume you are as well, Uber, familiar with the clip from Family Guy, right? Where they're in the office and he's being presented with you can either get a boat or you can have the mystery box. And she's like, oh, well, of course we're going to take the boat. And he's like, well, hold on, Lois. I mean, a boat is a boat, but a mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. It's just that this is sort of how I feel about the Bills linebackers right now. It's like, except that the boat is not a boat. It's like a worn out Vietnamese shrimping vessel. It does nothing. You're either choosing between that and a mystery box. Nothing about this makes me feel comfortable about this situation.
Yeah, earlier today I defended their handling of the right tackle situation on Twitter because I think there's some lack of ability to have addressed that this offseason. I'm not going to defend their handling of the linebacker situation. I don't understand what the plan was here. And I'm a Terrell Bernard defender, by the way. I think Terrell Bernard
I would like to see Terrell Bernard. I want to see what he has in store, but he's dealing with another injury. So the mystery box could be anything.
But they should have brought in a vet. I mean, mine that I kept hammering was Zach Cunningham, who I know he's been hurt, hasn't played much. He's on the Eagles now, so he's gone. We can't get him. I wanted Alex Anzalone. He re-signed with the Lions. He's kind of big. He's got a similar like body to a Tremaine Edmonds. We're just never going to find Tremaine Edmonds again because he's never existed before. He's a freak.
Right.
And so I think the Bills are, I don't know what their idea was. They essentially said, here's 3 outside linebackers. Let's try one of them at Mike and see if it works. I don't know if it's going to work with Bernard. They refuse to try Dorian Williams there. Dorian looks pretty dang good in preseason. I'm not saying he'd be great, but he looks good. Like, we'll try him there. I'll tell you this. He's better than Tyrell Dodson. I'm done with Dodson.
Yes.
Like
I'm so over.
I was holding on. I had some sort of hope for him. I don't know why. I was quietly doing it because I didn't want to start any fights in certain chats I'm in. But after this game, I'm like, no, he can't play. I'm done. Cut him. I don't care. He looked awful.
Well, not only is he just not that great of a player to begin with, but like he's out there starting fights on back-to-back days. This is your starting middle linebacker. And like you have Isaiah McKenzie on Twitter being like, fight him, Dion. First of all, I love that Isaiah McKenzie, even though he's not on this team anymore, is still on this team. And it's like his spirit will always live on with this team no matter what. But it's just like, what are we doing here? Where like a former player for this team is just like, yeah, screw F him up.
He'll sign a one-day deal to retire with the Bills. I promise you that Isaiah McKenzie will do that. I promise you. Give me a bag of Skittles, a one-day contract. But
it's just I can't make sense of having, and like I've talked about this. I've talked about this during the offseason. Like they've used him before when Tremaine Edmonds has been out. He's been the one to call plays for the green dot. So obviously there was some measure of trust they had in him, but like now they're trying to give him more responsibility, and he's like a teenage boy, just like, nah, screw that. I'm gonna crash the car into a tree. It's just like nothing about it. It's like get rid of him, get rid of his license, take him off Twitter, ground him, whatever. I'm done with Tyrell Dodson. I don't care if he makes this team or not. At this point, I kind of hope he doesn't. They have enough linebackers. Get him off. I'm done. I'm done with Tyrell Dodson. And when you've drafted Terrell Bernard, you've drafted Dorian Williams, you've got AJ Klein, you're still paying Tyler Matakevich to be a special teams only linebacker. Like, you have enough linebackers. Let's get rid of one, and let's get rid of one that nobody seems to like. Let's move on and give Dorian Williams a chance to. Oh, and of course Matt Milano. But we kind of just like we don't need to talk about Matt Milano as part of the linebacker conversation. Matt Milano is Matt Milano. We don't need to bring him in.
Yeah, he's Matt Milano and he's beautiful. So
that's right. So, but like, I said this last night where somebody said, Dorian Williams. I think it was Brett Coleman, right? When he showed the tackle for loss near the goal line of Dorian Williams, and he's like, hey, Dorian Williams could get a lot of snaps this year. And I was like, yeah, he is going to get a lot of snaps in the one game that Matt Milano misses because of a hamstring injury. Because he always has some sort of hamstring or whatever injury that keeps him out of a game. And it's like, all right, there you go. Dorian Williams, a lot of snaps there. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in seeing more of Dorian Williams. I will be interested in seeing Terrell Bernard if and when he ever comes back from this injury. And I sure hope Terrell Bernard starts in week 1 because I don't want to see Tyrell Dodson doing it. I'd be okay with AJ Klein doing it, I guess. But like I don't want to see Tyrell Dodson out there against the Jets. I really don't. I don't really want him on the team at this point. I'm okay with kicking him to the curb and letting another team make that mistake. Eat the guaranteed $2 million that for some reason you felt was a good idea to give him. Anyway, moving on. We're going to talk about wide receiver Justin Shorter, who in week 1 did not get any targets and did not make any catches because he didn't get targeted. So in this game, he had 5 catches, 47 yards, and a touchdown. Pretty good. I mean, he looked pretty solid. In fact, it was one of the first 2 catches, I can't remember which one, where he caught it, separated from the corner, and then like immediately got rocked by the linebacker and held on to it. I was like, oh, that's a good catch. That's like a real catch, right? Like it's not one of these preseason, you got open against a future insurance salesman. right? Like he got open and then he took a hit and made the catch in traffic against a tough hit, a good play. Like that's the sort of play that he is here to make, essentially. Like if he's going to make this team, that's the sort of thing you have to be able to show in the preseason. He just looked like he had more energy, a little bit more focus, a little more drive in this game as opposed to the first game against the Colts. It was good to see. Obviously, this is a very crowded wide receiver room. It suddenly went from like, there's no wide receiver 3 on this team to like, oh my gosh, Howard, can we keep 10 wide receivers? Like, will the NFL allow us to keep 10 wide receivers? I mean, it's going to be tough. He's in a tough competition for this spot, but it's interesting. This is a good step forward for him.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I liked a lot about the Bills' game plan with him, and this is a thing you see in preseason all the time, the Bills are going to put players in uncomfortable situations so that they can address the things that they need to work on or they aren't great at. For Justin Shorter, everything I've read about and everything I've seen about him, he's a boundary wide receiver. He's going to run down that sideline. You're going to throw the ball up. He's going to make the catch. And the Bills said this week, we're going to run slants. You're going to catch the ball over the middle in traffic. Mm-hmm. Can you do that? Justin Shorter showed that he has some promise that he can do that. And that's going to go a long way into the Bills' decision to either keep him on the roster, try to sneak him onto the practice squad, or send him elsewhere. After this game, I think Shorter's trending towards that. He's going to make the 53. They got the 5th round pick investment in him. He looks like he can fit there. He can play special teams, which I know a lot of people on Twitter will lose their minds when I say that special teams matters for a wide receiver 6, but it truly does. Justin Shorter, he had to earn a roster spot this summer. He wasn't going to be he's a 5th round pick, wasn't going to be given it. I think he's taking step toward earning it. He's got to have another decent preseason game though.
I agree. I want to see more of Justin Shorter. I really want to see more of really a lot of these receivers. There's so many of them, and they're all finding different ways to make different plays. Obviously, even somebody like Andy Isabella, who came in late during training camp, has captured the attention of Bills Mafia like few people have. And so some of it is justified. I mean, we've talked about Andy Isabella on here, and we all like his potential, but it's just like, let's pump the brakes. He probably didn't need like his own press conference or anything like that, but what are you gonna do? Moving on. Nick Broeker, 7th round pick, guard, has looked solid through 2 preseason games, especially as like a 7th round pick, which is another nice thing to see. And again, I kind of briefly touched on this, that like the Bills' backup offensive line has played fairly well throughout this preseason. Between obviously you have Ryan Bates as your starting or as your backup center. So he's had plenty of starting games in the NFL. So you feel comfortable with that. You have David Edwards, again, a former starter for the Rams. He's looked really good, especially in the preseason. And I think that was a really good low-key signing that they made to have like legitimate guard depth at where NFL teams are struggling to find starters at those sorts of positions. The Bills were able to find really good depth, somebody who has started games in the NFL. So I thought that I think he's played pretty well. Having Nick Broeker, he's for a 7th round pick to be able to not be, again, sort of like what I talked about with Torrence, is like, he doesn't seem to be overwhelmed. He doesn't seem to be out of position. He doesn't seem like he doesn't belong there. And for a 7th round pick, that says a lot, I think. Like to be able to say, like, I belong on this field with everyone else.
Yep.
Is a good first start for a 7th round pick to be able to do that. And I think, is he going to make this roster come cut down day? Probably not. But they will probably look at him and say, like, look, we're going to cut you right now. Stay in the parking lot. If you're not claimed on waivers, we're bringing you right back. Because this could be just like a really nice, solid pick that ends up being a really good depth piece for this team. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with having good offensive line depth in today's NFL, because most teams are struggling to fill out a starting 5. And the Bills kind of are too, but it's not quite as egregious as some other teams are at the moment.
Yeah, I heard today, and I don't know if I misheard this. I listened to national sports radio, and I believe they were talking about the Raiders saying Greg Van Roten's going to start at guard for them this year. So that should just show you the issues most teams have with starters. But when it comes to Nick Broeker, like you said, I think you said it really eloquently. I guess I'll use that word. He looks like he fits. Like he looks like an NFL player. He doesn't look like some deer lost in the headlights. He looks like an NFL player. I don't think he's going to make the roster. I don't really see a path for it. And again, I think you'll have some Bills fans going, well, why did Bean waste a draft pick on him if they're not going to sign him to the roster? And it's like the Bills traded down for a reason. They had to eventually take a pick. Like you can't trade the last pick in the draft. Like no one's going to take. So for Broeker, it was a developmental piece they could bring in, hope they can get him on the practice squad. They recouped, I believe, a 6th-round pick next year to just trade down and eventually get him. He's looked good, and I think he's earned a practice squad spot, if not with the Bills, somewhere else.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it's been a good couple of games for him so far. Again, 3rd preseason game, I imagine the backups, the 2nd and 3rd round guys, they'll all get a lot of run. They'll all get a lot of play in week 3 against the Bears. Bears? Is that it?
Yeah,
Bears. Yep. It is the Bears. Good for me. Memory's still good. It's still there. And it'll be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. Yeah, and like as Dylan here says, hope we can keep that guy Van DeMark and develop him. He's looked pretty good. Him and what's his name? Garage or whatever it is. Like both of them have looked. Yeah, Richard Garage. They both look solid as well. Again, this is it's not the most common thing in the NFL to have like consistent offensive line play as you get into your backups in the preseason. It's like it's all looking pretty solid. So good for the Bills and good. I think it's also another testament to like the hiring of Aaron Kromer, right? Where like at certain points last year, people were like, oh, we thought this guy was supposed to be a guru and do everything and make everything better. And it's like, well, there's only so much lipstick you can put on Roger Saffold and make him look great. And Spencer Brown is Spencer Brown, and we'll kind of see how that works as well. But I think you're starting to see more of Aaron Kromer's work being shown with guys like Torrence, with Broeker, Van DeMark, Garage. All these guys are now starting to. You're seeing the system really work in year 2 with Aaron Kromer, and that's a really good thing to see. So we're gonna move on to Alex Austin. 7th round pick again from Oregon State.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And corner. I mean, this is just such a classic McDermott Bean pick of just like, hey, here's a halfway decent, like kind of undersized zone heavy corner. Let's just take him, and eventually he'll be starting opposite Trey White at some point, probably. Yeah, I mean he. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to rewatch the game like I really wanted to, but I didn't really see a lot of Alex Austin on my first run through. So I'll let you kind of handle this a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, he filled in run support a couple times, looking good, like coming up, making some tackles that way. He had 3 tackles, which decent game for a corner, essentially. I just, there's no path to the roster for him. Like to the 53. This is another guy that he's trying to earn a practice squad spot, and he just might. He's got a similar, I'm going to say history, not going to say talent level, not going to say playability, similar history to Jordan Poyer, who is also a corner at Oregon State. Which is intriguing to me, but it means absolutely nothing. I'd like to see Austin, get him on the practice squad, let him practice. There's a chance he might play in games this year. Jamarcus Ingram had to play in games last year, and he was similar to Alex Austin in that facet. So, I mean, it looked fine. Looked like he belonged on an NFL field.
Yeah. UDFAs, talked about Garage, Tyrell Shavers was somebody that some people talked about as in training camp as like he's kind of showing out a little bit, struggled with consistency in that first game against the Colts, dropped a couple passes, but playing well on special teams, so that's a good sign for him. Outside of that, Jordan Mims scored a touchdown late. Sure, cool, whatever. And that's kind of it for me. I'm not really all that interested in UDFA talk for this team at this point. It's not 2008 anymore.
True. Yeah, I mean, I think Mims, he's going to make the practice squad. Like, the Bills like to have a running back there. Get a young guy, put him on the practice squad. No one's going to claim any of these guys really. Garage, we got to figure out how to say his name for real. Hopefully it is Garage. I really hope.
That's what it looks like. It looks like a French way of spelling garage. Like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do here.
And then you mentioned Tyrell Shavers. I like he can play special teams. I like special teams players. Yeah. And then the one that I'm concerned about, because I thought he was going to be a practice squad guy, was DJ Dale. Alabama, I believe, defensive tackle, but he's like hurt, and when you can't practice towards the end of training camp is when you start to lose your grasp on a spot. So, that practice squad spot might kind of slip through his hands here if he can't, get his health right.
Your best ability is availability when you're trying to make a team.
For sure.
That's how it goes. Real quick, we'll just kind of go through playing against the Bears on Saturday, 1 p.m., which is great. I always enjoy 1 p.m. kickoffs. That's probably the only thing I miss about the drought era Bills is having 15 1 p.m. kickoffs in a row. Now it's like, you get to play on Monday Night Football, and then at 4:25, and then on Sunday Night Football, and then on Thursday night. And it's like, I really, really hate this. I just want to watch this team, write my recap, and then take a nap while I watch some other football. Like, why are we killing me here? Anyway, that's just my own personal complaining. But Bears, 1 p.m. Saturday. Couple of former Bills on this team. Obviously, the aforementioned Tremaine Edmonds, the ever wonderful the pantheon of quarterbacking, Nate Peterman. It's a good thing that Nate Peterman seems to understand the game of football from a theoretical standpoint as well as he does, because from a very practical standpoint, he clearly struggles a lot. He's kind of like he kind of seems like Davis Webb, right? Where it's like anytime Davis Webb played in an NFL football game, you saw why he wasn't supposed to ever play in an NFL football game. But everyone that ever talked about Davis Webb when he was here and last year when he was with the Giants, all basically said the same thing, which is just like, this dude's a future coach and he needs to be like coaching right now. But hey, for as long as you can make those NFL backup quarterback paychecks, I'd do that as long as I could too.
Yeah, I'm never going to forgive Nathan Peterman, though. Josh's rookie year, I made the awful drive. I don't live in Buffalo, by the way, for people that think I do. I live right outside of Albany, so it's a 4-hour drive of misery for me to Buffalo. And I was like all excited to see Josh Allen play the Bears, and Nathan Peterman played that game. And so because Josh was hurt, and he proceeded to just look like he looked like Nathan Peterman. I'll just leave it at
that. That's what he was. That game was a perfect example of who he was and who he is as a player, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a bad backup quarterback. There's plenty of them. It's just that he's had some really bad games. It's like every single. It's not even just that he's like not great, right? Like, it's not that he's just boring and taking a check down every time or anything like that. He's just a turnover machine, man. Like, it's really hard to have as many negative and bad plays that Nate Peterman has had, and for teams to be like, yeah, bring him on the roster. He'd be great. Be a great addition for our quarterback room.
Oh, God. Nathan Peterman.
But
I think that's enough.
Anyway, that is enough about Nathan. It's arguably too much about Nathan Peterman. But this Bears team, I don't know where you're at. I don't know. Like, you watch a lot of other teams, and you've kind of gone into other teams, breaking down the AFC East. Obviously, you've looked at the AFC North. I don't know how much NFC you go through, but that division in itself is pretty up for grabs, in my opinion.
Mhm.
With the Packers being so uncertain with where they are, the Lions, like, they might be able to do it if they kind of continue where they were at the end of last season. The Bears having a much improved roster. How much improved is to be determined. And the Vikings obviously won the division because they won a bunch of games last year, but they also had like a pretty strong negative point differential in doing that. So I don't really see them being a contender in the same way that maybe some of the other teams are. I like the Bears. I really like Justin Fields. I really like his potential. I like that he has continuity now with this offense. I like that they brought in DJ Moore. I like that they invested in this offensive line. I like where this team is going. I don't know how far they're going to go in this season, but I think you'll see a very clear step forward for this team.
Yeah, I mean, for the Bears, for me, for Justin Fields at least, I got to see it first.
Sure.
There's some hype. He got an MVP vote last year. Dead serious.
Which is stupid. Like I'm a Justin Fields fan and I'm a Justin Fields believer. Putting an MVP vote for Justin Fields for what he did in 2022 is asinine. Like, come on. Be serious.
Denny Killington was more deserving of his MVP vote than Justin Fields. But yeah, I mean, this team, the offense, let me see it. Justin Fields, the defense, they were bad last year. They're going to be better this year. I mean, their linebacking core looks actually really good now that they have Tremaine Edmonds. They have a linebacker that I've been standing since last year in Jack Sanborn, who I would love for the Bills to find a way to get. I don't think that's going to happen. But
I think that the Bears defense will be more improved. I think that the offense will be more consistent. Whether or not all that matters for this game, the answer is no, because it's probably just going to be a whole lot of backups. And unfortunately, you're going to see a lot of Nate Peterman versus like Kyle Allen because Matt Barker got hurt after his like 3 turnovers or whatever it was. So, Kyle Allen will probably just sort of by default win this backup quarterback spot if Matt Barkley is actually hurt for an extended period of time. So
what's your percent confidence 0 to 100 that Josh Allen is not going to play this game?
I would say I'm like 95% confident he doesn't play in this game.
Yeah.
So I think that tracks with like previous years, right, where they play him for like a game for a little bit, and I think they would have liked to seen more out of him in that Steelers game, but they just sort of got from it was clear that keeping him in the game was not really going to help anything, and so you kind of have to pull him. So like, maybe he gets like a drive against Chicago, but even then I doubt it. We'll see, but I doubt it. I think that's it. I think we're good. Thank you all for joining us here tonight on the Cover One Roundup. We always love having you all. It is a great time. We really enjoy doing this. We just really love putting on this show. We enjoy seeing all the comments and interacting with you guys. If you want to do more of that, consider checking out OnePass. This is our subscription service. You pay $57 a year for this. You get access to exclusive content with us. You get more in-depth analysis than you would normally get. You get access to the Cover One community on Slack. There's all sorts of people on there, all talking about all sorts of different things. And, let's say you're in a Twitter group DM with some other Bills fans, and you're not somebody that pays for the Twitter service to allow you to have unlimited DMs. Guess what? You don't have to worry about that with Slack, and you'll probably have better people on there than I don't know. Maybe you're with your friends on these group DMs. Who's to say? But let's say you're just looking for another place to talk with Bills fans on game day. That's a great place to do it. It's a great group of people. You get all sorts of fun people that you get to interact with, and plus you get a nice T-shirt and a decal. So it's hard to beat, especially for $57 a year. You're not getting better NFL content, especially about the Bills, anywhere else for that kind of money. Be sure to hit the like button on your way out. Be sure to leave us some comments. Share this wherever you want to. I mean, I'm sure some of you know some sort of Bills fan who doesn't know about the wonderful Cover One Roundup, and they need to hear the gospel. They need to hear the truth of the Cover One Roundup. So please share us. Subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this on. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Follow us on Twitter at Cover One, and you can follow me and Uber. Where can the people find you on the Bird app?
You can find me on Twitter at UberHansen. This week, Wednesday, I'm dropping my preview of the New York Jets. That'll be the third preview in the AFC East series. Next week will be the Buffalo Bills, but got to finish up the rivals before we get there.
Of course, you all can find me at DFAUXY or at DFoxy. That is going to be it for tonight. Thank you very much. I refuse to call it X. I will not do it. I will die on this hill. It's Twitter, and that's how it's going to be. Thank you, humble Bills fan, for ending that show for us. Thank you all for joining in. Bye-bye.